Yeah.
All right, Jason, you're on when you're ready.
Hello, everybody, or should I say, hey up me ducks, as this is quite a northern version of the Ramsreview Podcast. Obviously, Cory, you're all the way over in America, so you're quite northern. But in terms of obviously guest on the podcast, it's been a few more southerners on in the last few weeks, but it's nice to get it a bit closer to home today. In Chris and Carlo from what podcast, Cory?
The Reds Report, Chris and Carlo, the Reds Report.
Reds Report. There we go.
I would say the quintessential Barnsley podcast. Carlo, Chris, thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much for having us.
Yeah, nice being here.
Yeah, some nice northern chat. I can't wait. It's going to be great. It's going to be great. With a few strange questions thrown in later on. Cory normally likes to chuck a strange question in. I've probably got one as well. But we'll start with your opinion on what is it, 10 games so far for Barnsley. Just flicking through the results actually earlier from Barnsley, a couple of wins, couple of draws and defeats. Again, it looks like in this we seem to say this all the time, Cory, but in this strange COVID world, and you look at the fixtures, Barnsley have kind of picked up the results in the one that you might expect them to get beaten, and then they've got beaten or drop points in the ones that you might possibly say they could probably pick up some results. But I do know, obviously, from when you came up a couple of years ago, just looking at it from an outsider, it actually looks like that Barnsley, they're starting to put a side together, I suppose, that, you're not looking over your shoulder at relegation now. It is more of for me, it looks like you're pushing on to that, that next level as such and trying to make yourself become a regular competitive team. Obviously, we'll touch on that in a minute. But first of all, Carlo, I'll go with you first, then, and Chris, you can pick it up. First 10 games for Barnsley. Is it about fair where they are with the points that they've got?
Yeah, listen, 10 games, 3 managers, Struber, Murray as caretaker, and Valin Ismail has now had a few games as well. Given the fact that, the style of football will always be the same for Barnsley, that gegenpress, that high intensity. I think, especially on the Ismail, I think they've shown more of a togetherness. The thing is, though, when you say, the teams that we expect to beat us, they tend to be the footballing teams. And I think that's when we can gain the upper hand. If you look at a team like Cardiff that are strong, physical, maybe their football isn't as nice to watch, but it was definitely very, very effective against a very poor Barnsley side on Tuesday night. So, listen, if we can stay out of the relegation zone and more compete rather than survive, it'd be a good season for me.
Mm.
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned teams that Barnsley should be beating or teams that maybe they shouldn't get anything off. According to every away fan that we ever played in Championship for the past 10 years, it's teams like Barnsley that we probably should have 0 points according to every away fan. So we can't go on that in the Championship, can we? Everybody can beat everybody. In terms of, Jason, you mentioned Barnsley seems to be building something. I think it's a long process. It's a long, drawn-out, 4 or 5 year plan of resale investment. And I have no doubt that once this side starts competing, that we'll start to get picked off again. But it's how that money's been spent. And at the minute, it appears it's been spent wisely, as back line is certainly shored up from the last time we were in the Championship, which obviously, having that base gives anybody a chance to win any football game. So fingers crossed, as Carlo said, we could end up safe mid-table somewhere like that. That'd be amazing. That'd be a massive achievement.
Yeah, I'd have to agree. I think, Cory, you probably be able to. We did obviously a preview before the season started, and I actually think Cory's got Barnsley as the dark horses in the league to surprise one or two. And I must admit, obviously, certainly towards the back end of last season, you were picking up some results. You can only beat what's in front of you, and obviously you take it into the next season, like you've just said there, Carlo. Probably the 3 managerial changes already probably hasn't helped all too much, but hopefully now you can get settled in. 10 games in, a lot of football to play. Still a lot of football to play for. And I think you're right, Chris, and I think we're seeing it even more so at the minute under COVID. That football across. Let's look at some of the results that have been happening over the past few weeks. Anybody can definitely beat anybody. I mean, we went to Bournemouth last Saturday, and for the large part, should have won the game, and we come away with a point, and then we turned up last night against QPR at home, and
Derby turned up last night?
The least said about that, the better. Yeah, well, no, they didn't. No, exactly, they didn't.
That's what I thought.
Yeah, it's a very...
up, and I didn't know where they turned up, though. I thought it was a chip shop.
It may as well have been. I know I got a message from you at about 3 this morning after you'd finished watching the game, and you were displeased.
And I just want to explain to the audience, I don't want to leave them hanging here. I just said this was Dyer and not Eric Dyer.
Yeah,
it
was. Yeah, it wasn't good at all. But obviously, so Barnsley again come back up, and of course, out of all these sides, that kind of come up and then not quite do it, and bit of a yo-yo club, I suppose, at the moment. Yourselves, Rotherham, Wigan, to a certain extent. Let's see where they end up this year. And it's all about taking that next step there, like you said, Chris. You want to be, and like you said, Carlo, you want to be competing, not looking over your shoulder. I mean, even if it's comfortable, I suppose finishing 17th, 18th a couple of seasons in a row isn't a problem to Barnsley, as long as they're not constantly looking over the shoulders. And to be fair, it's something that we're doing at the minute. In terms of, like you said there, Chris, obviously you feel that defensively you're a bit more prepared than you was in the Championship last time. The very small time frame and transfer window and pre-season and everything, how did it fare for Barnsley in terms of pre-season and obviously transfer window? Did they get some good business in the end?
Yeah, well, opinions. In my opinion, we got some really good business done. Matty James being an absolute brilliant acquisition, great player, played at a higher level, dictates games, dictates play. And I've no doubt will bring vast experience to that young midfield that Barnsley team's got. We've also got Helik or Helik, depending on who you ask, the centre-back, Polish centre-back for Barnsley. He looks like a defender. I know that today they voted on Sky Sports, they voted Nemanja Vidic the best Premier League defender of all time. I'm not going to say he's that. I'm not going to say, but he's certainly a defender as opposed to a footballer, which we're starting to see more and more, aren't we? We're starting to see football playing defenders. He generally looks like a defender. I'm sure Carlo will build on that when I've finished. But yeah, I think the business has been good. I think we missed out on a striker. I think we were in for a striker at time. Then we were allegedly in for a free agent striker. I'm not so sure about that. I think it were a case of seeing where COVID sat us in terms of the fans. It's another $4 grand, $5 grand a week wage that we probably couldn't have afforded. So I think that it was just a case of feeling that out. We might be short up top. But other than that, I was pretty happy with the window, Carlo.
Yeah, I think positives transfer window, Matty James, because he suits our style. We need an experienced head, even if it's just so Alex Mowat can be more up the pitch and scores goals, and that's what we've been seeing that Alex has been doing. Herbie Kane, for us a record buy, I think 1.25 million from Liverpool. He played us off the pitch when we played Doncaster a couple of seasons ago. He was his whole last season, but he had some injuries. Not really featured yet because we seem to have a pool of midfielders. When you look at Mowat, you look at James, you look at Kane, you look at Styles, you look at Palmer is injured, so there's quite a few. So we've not seen Herbie Kane sort of, do anything yet. And I agree with Chris. I think we're crying out for a target man. And if you look at the last few seasons, we sold Kiefer Moore to Wigan, and he's never really been replaced. Yeah, we brought Patrick Schmidt in. He was an impact sub. And scored a couple of vital goals. Don't get me wrong.
Well, what an impact!
Yeah, he scored a couple of vital goals. Personally, I would like to see that partnership between Schmidt and Woodrow, who's hopefully fit for Saturday, to be given some time because he likes to play three up front. So we know Woodrow is in the centre of that. Connor Chaplin was a fantastic player in League One. I'm still undecided up front whether he is made for sort of this division. But yeah, besides a striker, I think we've showed up at the back. Completely agree with Chris. Midfield, I think there's lots of strengths and there's depth as well on the bench. It's just up front. I think if Coley Woodrow's not playing, that can cause us, real problems because he is in our strike force. He's the Mercedes among some other Fiat Puntos.
I think, in fact, there's a couple of names that you've just mentioned there who are your striking, that forward line. They're the names that I suppose have been, kind of known and they've been banded about a bit, but they've just never really taken, like you said, the championship, maybe taken the championship by storm when they've been in there. But like you say, it might only take that one thing to make Barnsley, those players click. And Barnsley then, like you said, from the sounds of it, and as I said, I watched quite a bit of Barnsley towards the back end of last season in lockdown. They looked a pretty good side. They looked a side that we say. You look at the division, and it's not so much a where do you place yourself. It's kind of like who do you see that you expect to finish, obviously under you and like below you and that kind of thing. And I'd say that there are probably worse teams at the moment in the division, certainly 4 or 5 than Barnsley. I think Derby at the minute seems to be bloody one of those. To be perfectly honest with you, unfortunately.
And I think as well, we discussed it. I think when after COVID 1.0, when the game came back, I think the young Barnsley side, especially in defence, were helped by the fact that there were no fans, because Barnsley fans, as I'm supposed other championship clubs as well, the cheering, the clapping, you make a mistake, you get booed every touch you have. And for some of these players, that majority that have come from abroad, when you look at Mads Andersen, and I think when he makes a mistake, his confidence just went. With nobody, with no fans in the stadium, he's become an integral part of our back three. And I think that's where COVID actually helped us a little bit as well, by taking some of that pressure off the young players.
Mm. Yeah, I think we saw that, didn't we, Cory, to be honest with you, in what we were doing. And unfortunately, we're probably the other side at the minute now. We could do with a crowd in there just to try and get some voice across, because our bench don't seem to be able to do it. Yeah, our bench don't be able to seem to pass instruction. So maybe the fans could. Who knows?
I want to touch on. We talked about, Jason. You talked about seeing Barnsley after lockdown last season. And first of all, we can't see this in a podcast, but when Chris was talking about a proper defender and not a footballing defender, he had a smile as big as a Cheshire cat. And I just love that. I love a proper footballing defender, Chris. I'm right there with you. But yeah, we all saw Barnsley's, kind of great escape against Brentford, where, tail end of last season, which was one of the games in the championship of the season for me. And Gerhard Struber kind of came in and kind of turned Barnsley around in a way. At least it seemed like that from where I was sitting. How gutted were you that he went to New York Red Bull?
Carlo, do you want to
go first? No, you go first, mate.
All right.
Looks before knowledge.
I wasn't too gutted, and that might shock a few Barnsley fans. Massive turnaround back in the last season. What he did for that Barnsley team is nigh on a miracle. He took a team that were absolute rock bottom in terms of not only in points but confidence, leaking goals. Adam Murray came in for a stint, as he always does. Shored us up a little bit, pinched a few points here and there. And then Struber came in and worked his magic. And from the minute I met him in his unveiling, I thought he was a magical person. I really thought either that or he was a lunatic. He was going to either way. And it went the way of he was a genius, and he saved Barnsley. However, I'm a big believer that every manager has their timeline, has their what's the word I'm looking for, shelf life. And I think his shelf life was up at Barnsley. I don't think he was as backed as much as what he would have liked to have been by the board. I don't think they brought in players that he wanted to bring in to a certain degree, and the results didn't show either at the start of the season. We didn't pick anything up under him. So I don't know. I feel like his time were up to a certain degree, and as soon as, again, you don't know what other outside agencies are involved. I'm assuming there was contact from New York early doors. Stuff like that has a massive effect, doesn't it? When Huddersfield come knocking for Stendhal, that had a massive effect on results as well. So I think his time were up, and I think we've dropped on really well with this manager. And massive praise to Adam Murray for filling that gap again.
I think as well, the problem with Struber, don't get me wrong, he from picking up where Stendhal left off, and he did a great job, especially given that break in play, and then having to play teams like Leeds Leeds. Now, don't get me wrong, Leeds beat us, but even their press were talking about how well Barnsley did, and then Brentford to the great escape. The problem with Struber, I think there's a fine line between confidence and arrogance almost. And the problem was that, for me, and this is as a fan, he played certain players, to me, out of position. If you look at the goals that Alex Mowatt's been scoring in the last few matches, but he was in front of the back four under Struber. Coley Woodrow was in the number 9 role. Connor Chaplin, don't get me wrong, love him or hate him, but he's about 5'3". So high balls to it is just not going to work. And when Adam Murray then took over, Woodrow went back in a striking role, and then obviously when Valérien Ismaël came in, and Matty James as well. Matty James released Mowat to be able to go up front. So I agree with Chris. I think he did really well. There was obviously interest. In his parting interview, after the Middlesbrough match, to sort of say, my ambitions are for Barnsley not to be, fighting relegation every season. I'm not sure if the board have the same ambition. I don't know. That's a bit of a cheap shot, because I'm presuming he would know what resources he would have, and it just remains to be seen how Ismaël takes it over. I think Ismaël comes over as stronger is maybe not the right word, but I think he believes far more in the relationships between the players. You see that togetherness in the dressing room, and his famous last words before the first match was, "And you give everything on the pitch, and you're there for each other." And I think that for a relatively small town like Barnsley, where it's the football club means a lot to a lot of people, I think that's what we needed to hear as well. Struber always talked about the focus, but when you're losing 2-0 and 3-0, you're not picking points up. It's not really, it didn't sound right to me. So when he left, he did fantastic, but I think Ismaël he just suits our style of play, doesn't he? He suits our style of play, of that high intensity, high pressing. I think from what I've seen so far, I don't know how Chris or you guys feel, I think Barnsley are probably one of the fittest teams, energetic-wise, because they'll press you for 90 minutes non-stop.
I think he suits the town, Carlo, as well, doesn't he? He suits the town.
Yeah.
Yes, he's a great manager, or he appears to be a great manager on paper, but he just seems to have a little bit of grittiness about him, and a lot of work ethic, and a lot of Barnsley fans will buy into that, and rightfully so, because that's what the town epitomises, really.
Jason?
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, but it's probably, we'll go on to it in a little bit more detail in a minute, but it's probably one of the things that worries me the most about coming up against Barnsley is the work ethic and the desire. Derby don't tend to, well, just recently anyway, don't seem to like it when they get pressed. If you can get that pressed on, you'll get quite a lot of joy out of us. We will play out from the back, and we will make mistakes. There's no doubt about that. So I think that energy, it does seem that, I mean, Cory, can you honestly remember a time where Derby played with a person and an energy, that could match with Barnsley's, work ethic and stuff like that? Because I can't. It's been that long.
I can.
Oh,
it was about 7 years ago. So I think that train's left the station.
Yeah, doesn't seem to be the way that we play anymore. It's a lot more methodical, isn't it? It's a lot more methodical now. It's a lot more thought out. It's the Dutch way. Carlo, you'll probably know about that. Know more about that than anybody. But it's
Carlo,
the Dutch way of playing.
Is Carlo Dutch? Are you Dutch, Carlo?
Do you play football, Chris?
Yeah. But
I think you're right. I think though, why it suits Barnsley so much is, I mean, you said earlier on, don't you? We've got some players that are heard of in the Championship, but nobody ever puts them in the dream team kind of thing. And I think that's why it suits us. What we may be lacking talent, we make up for in work rate. And if we can't go past, if we ain't got a player in midfield that can go past 3 or 4 people and put a cross in, we can force you into making those mistakes. And you know what I mean? And I think that's why it suits us so much. If you look at, Steve and Chris as well, Stendel, Struber always played it out from the back. And that can get really, really, really frustrating, because I think we want to play like Man City, but we haven't got Man City players. Ismaël is now talking about the vertical game as well. And actually, we see that more now, where Anderson will look that pass over. So, and I think that's why it suits us. I think if you haven't got the best talents, I firmly believe in football, you can make it a work rate. Maybe we won't create many chances against Derby, but maybe you'll grant us some chances, if you know what I mean.
Oh, yeah.
It's the old adage, Carlo, that, hard work beats talent that doesn't work hard. And I mean, I think that's proven with Barnsley. You saw it against Brentford as well last season. Jason?
Yeah, I think your point there is quite right, Carlo. I mean, Derby will certainly gift you opportunities this season. Unfortunately, it seems to be the way that Derby are playing. And I'm still not convinced which style of football works into the championship. Unfortunately, I mean, you see one or two teams that really manage to get it to click, but I think for the majority of it, it's like now it's like the way of the world is playing out from the back and 5 at the back, like Sheffield United did it 2 years ago. It seems to be every way that any little thing you can try like that, but these systems they have to be practiced, they have to be worked at, and I think certainly from a Derby's perspective, we've tried to play that way for 18 months and it's not bloody working. So it's time to you either remove the manager, don't you, or you try and work with what you've got. And at the minute, I'm not quite sure which way from Derby's point of view it's going to go.
And I think that's why, and I'm sure Chris will agree, that's why I think what Barnsley's got it right. What Barnsley have said, this is the type of football we want to play. We want to play with that 3-4-3. We want to play high pressing. So the players we want have to be ideally up to 22, 23. They have to be fast. They have to have this energy. So we never give in on our style of play. If we lose, even against Cardiff, we tried and obviously that didn't work. But we'll never give in. We'll never put 5 at the back or go 1 up front or whatever. And I think that's why managers get appointed that we've never heard of, because they're looking for the managers that suits the style. And I'm not sure if with Derby, you've got a mismatch of a managing style, playing career in a certain way, and players that are used to, something different. It seems a bit of a mismatch, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. I think sometimes a manager can suit a style, and you've seen certain managers up and down the years that have made a name for themselves, like you say, playing a particular way. Want to focus attention now onto Saturday. Feels ages ago that we had a Saturday game. It was only last week, but this week just seems to have got really, really been crazy. So I think, guys, you've probably touched on a bit of what I'm about to ask there. From a Barnsley's perspective, coming to Derby on Saturday, key players for Barnsley, where's the game won and lost from your perspective?
Chris?
Key players for Barnsley, I would suggest Alex Mowatt and Matty James. And I think the game's won and lost in the middle of the park. I think previously, the last 2 wins before the Cardiff defeat, they came off back of us absolutely dominating midfield. Like Carlo mentioned earlier, we haven't got the physicality up front that's required to win that first ball. But I think if the midfield 2 or midfield 3 can get close enough, they can pick up enough second balls to be able to cause real issues in the dangerous areas of the pitch. So I think the game's won and lost in the middle of the park for me, Carlo.
Yeah, I think what we've seen, what we talked earlier about, what's changed about it, I think we've now got a little bit of a spine through the team. You've got Walton in goal, young goalkeeper, but very, very promising. Solbauer, Anderson, Hellick at the back. And then you've got Matty James and Alex Mowatt, and on the front, Coley Woodrow. And I think at times, last season, we missed bits of that. Now we've got a strong... And then fringe players, like, for instance, a Callum Britton that's back, who we bought in the win, who's done really, really well. Callum Styles, who I think, when we talk about resale, I think in a couple of years' time he'll be going for 1-2 million because he's like that. But I agree. I think it's in the midfield, and if we're allowed to play and press in the midfield, we're going to cause problems because that's what we've been doing when we've been allowed to do so.
Yeah.
I mean, so Cory, before we
go on to our score prediction, I just want to ask Carlo and Chris, because I've been asking this, and I don't know why I'm kind of stuck on mascots, but the Barnsley mascot, Jason, is Amos the donkey, which I think is just an amazing mascot. So Chris, Carlo, is he a family-friendly kind of mascot, or does he have an edge to him like Harry the Hornet or Bartley the Bluebird?
Are we on about Toby the Tyke?
Toby Tyke, our mascot.
Yeah, I was going to say.
Okay, well, Google was wrong. Fair enough.
Yeah,
so the nickname's the Tykes.
I'll be sending an angrily worded tweet to Google. So
yeah, we've got Toby Tyke. We did have Tina Tyke for a while, but I'm not sure where she's
They
disappeared.
split up.
COVID.
I think her skin is shedding in the old boardroom. I thought it was. I think they fell out there's a nasty court case going. But no, he's a very friendly family dog, very energetic, a bit like the 11 players on the pitch.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Who would win in a fight?
It's a question you love, isn't it, Cory?
Huh?
It's a question that you love. Love to ask about mascots.
I love the mascots, even though I got that one wrong for some reason, which is very embarrassing. So.
I'm not going to let you ask next time.
I'm eating humble pie, so I'm going to go on mute now and let you go back to the serious bit, Jason.
Yeah, he always likes to put that mascot question in. So before we do a score prediction, guys, I want your opinion for just a couple of minutes on you're coming up against Derby County. Obviously, you look at them in the league table at the minute, and I can assure you're probably no more surprised than Derby fans are as to where they are at the minute. But they do sit bottom. I'm presuming now that you probably look beyond that when you see you coming to Pride Park, and you would expect the Derby side of a challenging promotion challenging Derby side rather than one that's sat practically foot of the table.
Chris?
Sorry, you're breaking up there. What was the question in that?
Oh, sorry, mate. Basically, what do you think to Derby?
Goodness me. I have horrendous memories of Derby. Obviously, we got relegated there, didn't we? Not so long back, via Forest deciding that they were going to throw a game right at end to Bolton. So we got set down because of that. And nobody turned up that day, did they? I don't even think Adam Ammo or Ollie McBurney showed up that day. So I'm fearful of going there. I hate that place. So I'm glad that we're not allowed to go, to be honest, because I know full well that I'd travel. I know full well that if I do travel, we'll lose and I'd be highly disappointed. So I think we'll win. But no, Derby as a team, I'm quite envious of the resources that Derby have. The stadium is big, the catchment area is big, but I'm very jealous of a lot of teams in the Championship regarding stadia and catchment area and resources. We're always punching above us weight, and it'd be nice for it to be an even fight at some point, but I don't think we're going to get there. So I think Derby fans should be highly disappointed by where they are. To be fair, it's an embarrassment, if I'm allowed to say that on your podcast.
Absolutely.
I think it's an embarrassment that you are below a team like Barnsley with minimal resources that punch above the weight. And I think if we have a good game, I think you guys could be envious of us, depending on the passion that we show and the football that we are capable of playing. Carl alluded to it earlier. The issue we've got with Barnsley is the talent's probably not to Championship level yet, and everybody has to be on the game to bridge that gap. And if we're not on this game, we won't bridge the gap. Carlo?
Yeah, just to add to that, really, I think when you've got names like Koku as manager, being a Dutchman, obviously, you've got somebody like Rooney. I think everybody thought Derby would hit the league and just go there. You've got it because that infrastructure is there, from the facilities to the manager to on the pitch. And I think it's been a huge, probably deflated feeling that you have, because everybody thought they wanted it more. But we'll have to see. Maybe take over, clean out a bit, and let's see what happens. I'm pretty sure that probably January onwards, we'll see a different Derby and a different manager than what we see now.
Certainly, from our point of view and Derby fans' point of view, we certainly hope that. But I think, to be fair, Chris, I think you're quite right. I think everything that you and Carlo have just said, I think from a Derby fan base, we would echo what you're saying. It does feel a bit of an embarrassment being down there, and we keep trying to give him the benefit of the doubt. Not, unfortunately, we're getting to the point now where it's probably time to look at it in a bit more depth, and maybe not saying that it's just one thing after another. It's about time that something was done about it, but we'll see. Score prediction then, guys, for Saturday. Cory, you can fire us off with a minute to go. And you need to unmute your microphone.
I'm having a rough day. Yeah, I'm like Derby County, out of form. I'm actually going to go with a 1-1 draw.
1-1 draw. Carlo?
3-1 Barnsley.
3-1 Barnsley. Okay. Chris?
There's confidence, and then there's Carlo's confidence.
He's confident.
Do you do scorers, Jason, as well? Or?
We can do, if you want to give us that.
Well, I'm really sorry to say this as a Barnsley fan, but I think England's finest striker is gonna score on Saturday, and I think it'll be 1-0 to Barnsley. Corey Woodrow.
I have to. Well, I mean, to be honest with you, we're in a bit of a predicament predicting these